absolutely overwhelmed and delighted by the numbers of people that we have here tonight. And I think it just simply underscores the importance of the work that we're all doing here and the feeling that we have about the area where we live, what we need to do to protect it, and most importantly, what we need to do to protect ourselves. My understanding is that you can hear me in the very back row. Is that true? The guy in the gray, there we go. Thank you so much. Thank you. Just wanted to say, my name is Mary Adams. I'm the 5th District Supervisor here in Monterey County. And it's a real pleasure that I'm here, and it's a pleasure to have you here too, even though the subject is one that is of great importance and not a big party kind of thing that I so enjoy doing. But at any rate, this is an evening that we pulled together intentionally for a lot of different reasons. Since we had the terrible fire up in Butte County and the destruction of Paradise, which in itself sounds like a really awful thing to happen, and it was, we received more calls and more concern from people in our district than we had ever received on any other subject before. At the same time that we were talking about what we should do about this, I received a letter that absolutely touched my heart, and it was from Stacy Woods. Stacy, can you stand up for a sec? I'm not sure where you're seated. There she is. Thank you. We all owe a debt of gratitude to Stacy Woods. Thank you so much. Stacy sent a letter signed by more than 170 people in Robles del Rio expressing concern over the fire that had happened up in the north and what we should be looking at to do here. At the same time, the very next day, we had already organized a meeting with Chief Mercedes. So the timing was really all falling together. Just as I was sending an email to invite Chief Penholzer to come to this event, he was sending an email to us, inviting us to come to the event he had on evacuation for the Monterey Peninsula on the 24th. So it's on all of our minds, and I think that that's really critical, because if each one of us just does one thing to take care of what we need to do, it will spread, and I think my hope is that it will spread like wildfire. Although that's not a very funny way of looking at it, so I'll take that back. Okay, so what I want to do now is just take a couple of minutes to talk about the meeting. I want to, first of all, talk about the people that we have here with us today. First, to my immediate right, we have Under Sheriff John Minot, who is here. Next to him, we have Gary Malaise, who is the head of the Monterey County Office of Emergency Services. And then we have, over on the right, we have Chief Mercedes from Monterey Regional Fire Protection, And then next to him is Jonathan Pangmore, who is from Campfire. So those are the big dogs who are going to talk up here. But most importantly, we have the first couple of rows of many other people who are here to help answer questions. And rather than list them by name, I'm just going to list the resource, the group with whom they work. So we have Congressman Panetta's office is here, the Bureau of Land Management, State Parks, Caltrans, California Highway Patrol, the Resource Conservation District, the Santa Lucia Conservancy, the Monterey Peninsula Regional Park District, California American Water, the City of Monterey Fire Department, the Monterey CERT leaders, the SPCA Monterey County, the Big Sur Fire Brigade, the Mid-Coast Fire Brigade, the Carmel Valley Safe Open Space Committee. And I think those are most of the people. If there's anyone else in the front rows that I did not call out, please let us know. As I had indicated in the messages that we were sending out, the purpose of this meeting tonight, we have a couple of things. We want to talk particularly about the goals that we have, that we want people to walk away with. And that is essentially to know what you need to do in the case of a wildfire. Sadly, we have come to the realization that it's no longer if another wildfire happens. We have sadly had to come to acknowledge that it's simply when another wildfire happens. Most of us experienced some element of the Soberanes fire. And that was really devastating to us. At the time that that happened, it was the largest fire that had been recorded in California in the history of the country. But it pales in significance next to some of the other fires that took place. Tonight we're going to have the opportunity for community audience participation. We're going to have a chance for you to ask questions and for the experts to give answers. But they're each also going to take a few minutes to talk about what it is that their agency is responsible for and what we can do to help you be better prepared. So the purpose of the meeting is to provide information about what the key agencies are doing and what the community can do to prevent or to prepare for the next wildfire. The focus of this evening's event is to focus on preparedness before and then during a fire incident. The goal are to better prepare the community to handle an evacuation and also to help residents prepare your own plan. It's really been clear to me that we each have a responsibility here. We have a responsibility for ourselves, we have a responsibility to our neighbors, and we have a responsibility to our community. So my belief is that at the end of this event this evening, we'll come away with some ideas, some information that can be helpful. You also have resource tables that are around the room. I'm unclear exactly who's here, but I know that the Save the, what do we call that? The Carmel Valley Save Open Space is here. And I'm embarrassed because I forgot to mention that Colonel Ford is here from the
Hey, Colonel!
Monterey, who is another key player in all of the work that we will be doing. So with this in mind, I think what we're going to start with is asking each of the presenters to talk. I think we've given them 5 minutes each to talk about just a bit of an overview of what it is that their element is when it comes to fire. And then we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers, which I think is really going to be the part that's going to be very interesting for us. So at this point then, I'm going to turn the microphone. It's going to be a little awkward because we have to hand the mic back and forth because this is being streamed live by Campfire. And I thank you guys very much for making the arrangements for that to be done so that a lot of other people who aren't able to be here tonight will be able to see this as well and learn what we all need to do to be prepared. So with that, I'll turn to our Monterey County Under Sheriff, John Minot.
Thank you, Supervisor Adams. I'm going to start. I'm actually going to pass the mic to start with to.
You might want to stand.
I'm going to pass the mic to Gary because he's got a little more on preparedness, so we can kind of take this in order.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming tonight. The Office of Emergency Services, one of our main mandates is to provide preparedness for the community. So this is really right up our line, our ballywag, if you will, of what we do on a daily basis. And let me preface what I'm going to say tonight with every bit of information that I'm going to give you is on our website, Monterey County/OES. Just go to the website and you can have it memorialized, download it, print it out, and it's there for you. Our office, you can call it at any time and we'll be glad to give you as much individual attention as you need. Okay, but when we're talking about preparedness, like Mary said, we think of before an incident, in this case a wildfire, before a wildfire, during the wildfire, and we also talk about after the wildfire. How do you recover? Okay, so when you're talking before the wildfire, and I'll try to be as brief as possible because I only have 5 minutes, and so if it doesn't sink in, like I said, go to the website and it'll become familiar to you. Look at your space. Look at your home. Is your home made of combustible material? Do you have a combustible roof? Do you have a way for the embers to blow up under your shingles or into your attic through your vents? Those are all things you have to deal with ahead of time. Look at what the fire service professionals call defensible space. How much space do you have between your home, which is just more fuel for the fire, and the trees and the brush that are part of the wildland? That's called the wildland urban interface. And you all live in it just by being in this area. How much space is there? CAL FIRE recommends, and as by ordinance, 100 feet of clearance. But I don't think that's enough. And in some cases, you need more. As these fire professionals will tell you, a wind-driven fire can have a flaming fire front 500, 600 feet long. Okay, so it preheats ahead of the fire before the flame even gets to your combustibles. Do you have ornamental vegetation? Things that you've planted Cypress trees, they burn like crazy. You know, all the things that look real nice, they're just fuel. Do you have furniture out there, patio furniture that's combustible? All of those things need to be considered if a fire is approaching. That can extend the fire from the brush to your structure. Okay? What about your personal space? Do you have a kit, a go kit, an emergency supply kit? And if you do you have the right things in it? And I won't go through all the things because, like I said, they're on my website. We all know about 7 days of water and 7 days of food. Well, that's mostly for an earthquake. But certainly, you could be stranded in your house without power for several days. Okay, we all know the power goes out in wildfires. All right? Have you thought about medicine? You need to talk to your doctor about getting extra medicine rotated. Because when you have to leave, there's not time to grab your stuff. You have to have it in your go bag. And your go bag needs to be in your trunk, not scattered all around that you're going to pack it up. Because when these guys come down and knock your door, or when you get a message from Alert Monterey that says, time to go, that means go. That doesn't mean think about going, or I'm going to stay and squirt a hose on my roof. That means go. Okay, everything in your house could be replaced but you. Just keep that in mind. Some other things that you don't think about is electronics. Do you have extra batteries? Do you have extra chargers for your phones? Do you have a radio that you can wind up that doesn't need power? Extra clothing, blankets. If you get to stay in your house but there's no power for several days, it might be down to 40 degrees at night. You're going to need that kind of stuff. Candles as a last resort. So you can access our website for that. The second thing is preparing yourself is have a plan. When this happens, there's no guarantee that all of your family members are going to be huddled in your house and ready to leave at one time. They might be all over the place. You might have your children with friends. They may be at school. You may be at work. Have a plan of where you're going to meet. Is there somebody outside the area that friends and neighbors and relatives can call to check on you because they can't get a hold of you because none of the cell phones are working anymore? And practice that plan with your family. If you don't practice it, it's not going to do any good because you won't remember it when it's critical mass. Okay? Document your valuables ahead of time. I can't tell you how many, I spent a lot of years in the fire service, and I can't tell you how many people that would come back to their house that was burned up and their fireproof safe was completely intact and everything inside of it was ash. Because it got so hot that the paper burned at 450 to 600 degrees and it was 2,000 degrees outside the safe. Okay? So that's not something people think about. Take photos of your important documents. Send them to the cloud. Send them to someplace outside of where you're, even if you put them on a thumb drive, you can take that in your Go Kit. Okay, those are important, and your insurance company will honor photos of your documents. Okay, so don't forget to think about that. Camping supplies are awesome. If I used to have a whole section of my garage for camping supplies because if something happened, I could live in my front yard if I had to. So, and then stay informed. Okay, before the fire, alert messaging is going to go out. How many people, by show of hands, have signed up for Alert Monterey? Outstanding. But I still see 50% of the people here that don't have their hands up. Okay, that's, if nothing else, that should be something you do within the 20 minutes that you get home after this meeting. Go online, sign up for Alert Monterey. That is the county's way to inform you when there's an emergency. Okay, we all know about the wireless emergency alert system and iPaws and the thing that FEMA does, but if you want to be connected with the county, sign up for Alert Monterey. That's my office that manages that, and we have people here from my office that can talk to you about it in crazy depth. I see a hand in the back, Pat Moore out there. So that's something that you all really need to, if nothing else. I want you to do all the things I'm telling you to do, but that's super key. The people in Paradise, as you've all heard, they felt like they didn't have any warning. Okay, well, guess what? 15% of their community was signed up for their alert messaging. That's not enough. We all need to be signed up. And then when you get the message, you can tell your neighbors. Okay, when it's time to go, it's time to go. Okay, so during the fire, you might say, oh, I can't prepare during the fire, but yeah, you can. Okay, once again, stay informed. Listen to the radio. turn on your TV and watch the news. Get your cell phone charged up so that you can get messages that come over telling you if it's time to go. Look outside every once in a while. It doesn't take a lot of common sense. If the fire looks like it's close, get out of there. Don't stay. Okay? That's just, sometimes you have to use, the gifts God gave us. Okay? When it's time to evacuate quickly but safely. I can't tell you how many people, and all the fire professionals here will tell you, they've gone back in an area and they see dead people on the side of the road because they got an accident. And they couldn't get out and the fire overran them. We don't want that to happen. Okay? It's going to be chaos as it is. People are going to be trying to leave in a rapid fashion. It needs to be as organized as possible. We call it organized chaos. And I know that other people are going to talk about the evacuation portion of it. But when you're told to leave and you're given a direction and a place to go, go there. If we open up an emergency shelter, please go there. Even if you don't plan to stay there, check in. Let someone know you're okay. And then you go to your relatives or wherever else out of the area, that's fine. But at least we're not going to send the sheriff or the fire department in there to look for you because no one's heard from you. All right? Okay. So, and then after the fire, again, I can't talk about this enough. Stay informed. There are going to be resources available to you after the fire. We will open up a family assistance center. We will open up a family relocation center. The county is going to do everything it can to make it as easy as possible for you to recover from this terrible disaster, however you're affected by it. Okay? Check on your neighbors, and then mostly don't be afraid to talk about your experience. It's a well-known fact, and the people up in Paradise and that area in Napa can tell you, you start to have symptoms of critical stress, just like warriors, when you go through this kind of a tragedy. And you need to sometimes seek help. It's not a weakness. Okay? So there you go. I know I went over my 5 minutes. I got the principal hovering over me here.
I'm going to take the mic back.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Garrett. I know there are a number of people in this room who have lost their homes in local fires. And it's a tragedy that cannot be described. I did forget a couple of housekeeping things though, and the first thing is to let you know that the restrooms are out the door sort of around the corner. Also, I neglected to introduce two very important people in this room, and they are Sarah Hargrave, who is our my District 5 policy analyst. If you could stand up for a second. Where are you, Sarah? There she is. Good, thank you. And also, my very, very most important person is someplace in here. Yuri Anderson is my Chief of Staff. There she is on the red sheet. I'm also delighted to tell you that we have Monterey County Administrative Officer Lou Bauman. Dr. Lou Bauman is here. If you could, there he is. Excellent. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for that. Please help yourself to the snacks and such that we have as well, so that you can, I know it's an odd time, 6 to 8, but thank you for that. And now we'll go to Chief Arcades.
Can you pass these out? Just pass them back.
Thank you.
If anybody wants one.
Thank you. So Gary left me 30 seconds, so I'll be
I'll be coming by.
Thank you. Again, on behalf of Monterey County Regional Fire District and my board president, Pete Boitras, we're proud of some of the things that we're doing to help our community be prepared for wildland fires. One, our engine companies go out annually and we inspect homes in our community. We do it on a rotating basis of 3 years. We'll actually come around to homes and do an LE 100. That's coordinated with Campfire. That's under the Public Resource Code. That's an inspection. It's actually a citation if you're not in compliance. And we do that to be proactive to help educate the property owners to be in compliance. It does two things. One, it educates them, hopefully prevents their home in the event of a wildland fire, but it also is a tool to help them with their insurance companies in the event they're up for renewal or potentially being canceled, which is, I think the news said yesterday, $12.4 billion of losses this last year in California wildfires with insurance claims. Doesn't take into account the 2 prior years. So those are some things that we do. In addition, we've done district-wide pre-planned mapping. Those maps identify all the water sources, your homes, your addresses, evacuation, temporary refuge areas, and that's something, heliphones, those are tools that we can use during a fire or any all-risk event, hazardous material release, earthquake. We can use those maps as incoming resources come in. We can give them those maps. They have a QR code, they can download them, have them on their tablets, and that way they can help find your home in your time of need. Because as you know, when these large fires occur, it's just not Monterey County resources that are responding. So those maps were funded by Campfire grant funding. They were a tremendous hit during the Sobranas fire. We had them, and those incoming resources from all over the United States, those maps were a big hit. And before the incident was closed out, they replenished our whole inventory of maps, so we're ready for the next incident. Hopefully we never need them, but that Campfire grant funding was able to do that. This year we have a community chipping program. Again, that's under a California Climate Investment Grant of Campfire, and now you're starting to see some of our signs in the community where we do curbside chipping. That means you as a property owner, if you trim around your home and you have those tree trimmings and debris, you put it at your curbside, we come dispose of it free of charge. Again, it's a two-step process. We're trying to educate the residents, but also it takes your part to have someone get on your property and do it, because we can't do that. We can't enter on private property and trim trees on property and things like that, but we can dispose of it. So those are two things that we hope people take advantage of. We applied for some additional grant funding next year for the same program, and I can't speak for all the jurisdictions in Monterey County, but I'd say many of them in the 5th District have applied for that grant funding. You know, the one thing I want to do say is that, you know, just in Supervisor Adams' district alone, there's probably 16 different fire departments. That, you know, Monterey County is made up of diverse fire response, everything from private fire brigades to community service districts to fire districts to city jurisdictions under contract. We do coordinate. That's the one thing. Unfortunately, we lived this back in 1987 with the Morris Fire, Pebble Beach. You know, after that, we made tremendous improvements to our mutual aid system, our radio systems, and in the last, 12 years, we've burned 157 homes in Monterey County, and every time after, those events, we improve. And I can tell you the fire service in Monterey County works well together. Communication plans, automatic aid agreements, mutual aid agreements. And so for you as residents, we can tell you that California's system of moving resources nowhere matched in the world. So unfortunately, we get a lot of, exercising that system, being between earthquakes and floods and dam failures and wildland fires. But that's something that you should be proud of, that we do participate. We've had resources all over the state this year, including, I think we had some resources in Wyoming, some of our paramedics. So that way, in your time of need, they'll come help us because we help them. So we appreciate your support. I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan because we want to have some opportunities for questions later.
Thanks. Thank you very much. And I know that, I believe that Chief Panholzer is here. Oh, there he is. Okay, great. Chief Panholzer is Monterey City Chief and oversees both Monterey, Pacific Grove, and Carmel. Good. Thank you so much for being here. An evacuation specialist. I also wanted to say that there are some homeowner associations. Is there anyone here from High Meadows Homeowner Association? Yes, there's some people in the back waving their hands. I want to just pull them up as an example, just to let you know this, that there are some homeowner associations that have really taken this issue to heart and have worked to do a lot of additional community organizing in their neighborhoods so that they are prepared as well. And I encourage you to do that, to work with your neighbors, just as Stacy had started with the Robles Del Rio area. I think it's really going to be important for all of us to have those kinds of communications. So now we have Mr. Pangborn, Jonathan Pangborn from CAL FIRE. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Supervisor. All right, I'm Jonathan Pangburn. I'm a forester here with Campfire in San Benito, Monterey unit. And I want to first of all start off by thanking all of you for being here. This is part of the first step in making sure that we are set for the next event. You've heard Ready, Set, Go. That is the basis of all preparation and implementation during an event. Start off by being ready. We already heard about some of that from Gary Millay from County OES. Want to make sure that you're signing up for Alert Monterey, Code Red, notification services for your area. But it's not just that. It's having a communication system with your neighbors. Not everyone has the same kind of connectivity or services, especially in some of our more remote areas in this district, like some of the places in Big Sur or Paula, Colorado, Mid-Coast area. So part of it has to do with just making connections with your neighbors. And that's what this is really all going to boil down to. There have been a lot of questions about what to do. Well, we can start off by just reiterating defensible space and structural hardening. We want to make sure that you are creating a space that has as little material that is receptive to embers in the event of a wildfire. Wildfires happen all the time. It's actually a natural part of our ecosystem that we live in. The flaming fire front, especially when driven by wind, is going to throw ember cast ahead of it. If it falls on dry pine needles, dry grass, flammable chairs, or other outside furniture and such, that is what is going to catch. And as soon as it catches near your home, it has a high likelihood of starting your home on fire. So we want to make sure that we are creating defensible space around your structure. The other aspect of that you heard was something like making sure that you have less flammable materials such as your roof or maybe the siding. That's called structural hardening. We are trying to make sure that our structures are less flammable than they previously had been. A lot of this is addressed in updates to the fire code, but that does not have anything to do with all of the existing structures that we all live in out here. So we need to do our best to try to upgrade our homes to try to resist that spread. It takes one home. The defensible space is quite key, but it just takes one home, and that's where the structural hardening comes in, because once one home catches, most structural fires in a wildland fire environment are structure-to-structure ignition. So much heat and ember cast gets put off once the first home goes up that's what ends up carrying to the homes in the area. It's your neighborhood, it's your community. It's not just your home you're working to protect, it's your whole neighborhood, and it's their homes that are helping to protect yours. So this gets back to our relationships we make as neighbors. We're your neighbors because we live here, but all of you live here with other people, and we need to make sure that the people in the room, the people watching on television or on our live stream, we want to make sure that you are doing your part to communicate with one another before the event so that you can have those open lines of communication about keeping yourself safe and being able to go in the event of a fire. Continuing on that, evacuations. That's one of the common threads and big requests that we hear about. And a lot of people want to have the magic route of how to get out of their place, your neighborhood. There isn't one. And what I mean by that is it's situationally dependent. It depends on the type of incident, where it's coming from, and what the weather situation is at that time. There is no way that we can have an evacuation corridor that works for every event under every weather scenario. There are many instances in which what you would consider your primary evacuation route may be what's on fire. If we told you to evacuate in that direction, that would put you in harm's way. So unfortunately, although a lot of you want some really concrete answers on where to go in the event of an incident, we're not able to provide that until the time of the incident. That doesn't mean that we can't do some advanced planning, especially you coordinating with your neighborhood and your community. Know the routes in and out of your neighborhood. If you only have one, then try to work with your neighborhood on creating more than one. And that is something that we can answer more questions on either after this meeting or offline afterward if you want to speak to any of us about your specific situation. But generically speaking, drive around your area and know what the road situation is like. and think about where you would go in the event of a fire coming from this direction or this direction. It's going to be different many times. I understand not every community has multiple routes out. But generally speaking, the only way to prepare for this is having an idea beforehand. And then when the opportunity or when an incident happens in your area and we're dealing with a situation, you will receive notification, hopefully from Monterey County OES because you have signed up for Alert Monterey and Code Red, and also from Monterey County Sheriff's Department or local police department, depending on the jurisdiction involved, going around making notification, sometimes door to door, which puts them at risk. Please do your part to get out as quickly as possible when you hear an evacuation order. I did mention, though, that evacuation routes may be cut off. Part of being ready is having the ability to potentially shelter in place. That is a viable option in certain circumstances, and you need to do your part before the event to make sure that your home and your neighborhood is safe enough to withstand a flaming fire front going through the area if your evacuation route is cut off. A couple other points that I want to make sure that we touch on before I pass the mic, and again, there will be question and answer period afterward, so if I don't address a specific concern of yours right now, don't worry, there will be an opportunity later. I want to make sure that we really understand the aspects of being ready have to do with preparing your area in terms of defensible space and structural hardening, as well as your GO kit. You heard a lot about that, your emergency supply kit. Don't forget your pets, your youth, your children if you have them, whatever the case may be. Want to make sure that you are planning for all scenarios. You would be surprised at what is and is not in those. There is plenty of information available online. Monterey County OES, American Red Cross, we have it available as well. We have a lot of information about defensible space creation. That is at readyforwildfire.org. There is a variety of information out there, and I just want to make sure that you understand that is the critical piece here. The parts that you can do beforehand are what's going to help you mitigate some of it beforehand, as well as get you through it, and then help you through into that recovery phase. The more you do in advance, the better off all of us will be. The last point I wanted to make is the work that we're doing. Campfire is working, as you heard from Chief Rikides, with all of our local partners, and whether they're their own standalone districts like Monterey Regional, or they have cooperative fire protection agreements with us like we're in Cypress District right now, we work with all of our partners to make sure that we are helping to bring resources to the table as well as our own projects. We try to analyze the areas that have the greatest assets at risk and the greatest fuel loading and potential for issues, and we're trying to work with our partners. We have a lot of willing partners out there, and we want to make sure that if your fire district or department comes to you asking for your assistance, it's because of this meeting right here. We are trying to do our best to get out in front of this and work with you as well as our partnering agencies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really, really helpful. All of you are.
As we get ready for our last presentation with Under Sheriff Minot, I want to tell you that because we're streaming this live, we have to kind of manage the question and answer part. So I'm going to ask, if you intend to ask a question of any of the people that we have here, and there are many other resources in the first couple of rows, if you could please start to sort of line up over here, because I'll have you ask your question from the podium. So please just come on up and line up, and we'll move to that after Under Sheriff Minot's presentation. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Monterey County Sheriff's role in a wildland fire is going to be geared mostly towards evacuation. It'll be evacuation to start, it'll be security later once we clear the area. I can't emphasize enough the things that you heard from the previous speakers. It all starts with preparedness. Being ready to go, having a plan, having your stuff together if you have to evacuate immediately. Every wildland fire is different. Every evacuation scenario is different. There are times when when we're working on a fire, we work very close with our partners in the fire agencies, and there's times that we know within structures may be threatened 5 minutes from now, and that is the paradise situation. That is run and go and get out. And then of course there's times when we have a lot more warning. We're paying attention. The fire professionals are keeping us up to speed, and we may know that some set of structures could be threatened 5 days from now. And of course, from our perspective, that's the best scenario because it gives us a lot more time to keep people informed, to let them know that danger is inbound, and they've got more time to get ready and go. I will say, utilize every piece of technology you can. And I know it varies in different parts of the county, but the alert system is critical. That's one of the ways that we're going to get the word out. But local news, we're going to push things out to the news media as fast as we can. If you have an app for any of the local news channels, you're going to find out quick. I mean, it amazes me. I get alerts from the local news stations. They'll pop up on my phone, and I'll find that out faster than I can find out. It's like, wow, we have a shooting. But they really are valuable because you're going to find out the media is fantastic to get that quick alert out. And if you have that access, it's really going to help you, which is going to help us. When we come, we could be coming in to say, this is your 5-minute call, get out. Or we could be coming to say, the fire is advancing and you need to be ready. You need to be prepared. I will tell you, don't count on the government always being able to get there. That's part of what happened in Paradise. Those deputies were flying in there to try and knock on doors and get people moving, but it moved so fast and it overwhelmed that community in such a short time that there was just a huge number of doors that never got knocked on. If the time allows, we will knock on your door. We will say it is time to go, or it is time to be thinking about going. And the best thing I can tell you is, if we ask you to leave, leave. We see this in every single fire that we've ever dealt with. We'll get people that say, I'm not leaving. I'm staying. You see it all the time. You see it on the news. You see it in hurricanes. You see it in wildland fires. People that say, I'm gonna hunker down and I'm gonna ride it out. And at the end of the day, if somebody makes that decision, we're not going to drag them out of their house kicking and screaming, but you're really doing so at your own peril. And like you heard, the only thing that can't be replaced is you and your family and your pets and all those things that are very dear. And if we show up and say it's time to go, just go. Because if you do, and the fire passes by and it turns out to not be anything, then you were inconvenienced for a little bit. But if you don't go, when we hit that stage where we say, this is mandatory evacuation time, you need to leave. If you don't, there is a very strong likelihood we won't be back. I mean, we'll tell you, we're not coming back. This is our last pass. We won't be here. We're not going to be here to get in to help you. We're not going to be here to help get you out. And once, as the fire professionals are doing their work, they really need to dedicate all of their resources on the fire and not having to divert resources to go try and get somebody out who didn't leave when we asked them to. It really is important. And once you're gone, we're going to be there. Our second role in a wildland fire is once we get folks out, then we're going to be there on the ground as soon as it's safe, as soon as we can get in there safely. We're going to be there doing security patrols, on the lookout for looters, on the lookout for people that stayed behind to see if there's something we can do to help them out after the fact. But we're going to do everything we can to protect your property if it doesn't fall in the fire. And we'll be there as long as it takes until our friends in the fire service say, okay, you can start letting people back in. And when that happens, then we'll be able to pull back. But we'll be there in a perfect scenario. We're going to be there to say you need to go. Just don't count on that every time, because that's what happened in Paradise. So they just couldn't get in there fast enough to let people know. Being informed is the most important thing. Sign up for the alert system. Sign up for the local news apps. We're going to get that word to them quickly. They're going to get that word to you quickly. And then and just exercise your common sense. You don't have to wait for us to say go to go. If you look up and there's smoke in the air and you want to go, then by all means, go. We're gonna be there one way or another. We're gonna be there to patrol those communities and make sure that your stuff stays as safe as they can. Before I wrap up, I want to introduce a couple people here. Commander Garrett Sanders, he is in charge of our coastal station. Sergeant Murray is also in our coastal station. These two gentlemen have tons of experience, tons of wildfire experience, tons of experience with evacuations. These will be the two friendly faces you will see when you have a critical event. And whether it's a fire, flood, or famine, these are two of our real key people that are going to be out here trying to help you work through this. And we'll be here. We're happy to help with questions, but these two are here. They can talk about their experience with some of the other fires. Thank everybody for attending. We'll look forward to your questions.
Thank you. And I hope you feel as I, that there's just a certain comfort level that's raised knowing that we have the quality of people that we do have who are looking out for our concern and our care. I'll explain how we're going to do the next part. We have about 30 minutes set aside now, 45 minutes for community questions and answers. After that, then everyone has agreed to stay, and we'll have the opportunity just for individual discussions, both with the agencies and with the other people who are here as well. So if you don't get to come up and ask your question individually, you'll be able to mix and mingle and eat some potato chips. So there we go. I also forgot to mention that we're very delighted to be here at Powell Corona Regional Park, and I'm not sure if Rafael Payan is still in the room. There he is. Oh, there we go, back in the back. I really thank so much Rafael Payan and the Monterey Peninsula Regional Park District for hosting us tonight, and for Wedgwood as well, allowing us to use this room. I'm delighted that we're all here today. So we'll start with the questions, and I think he said it pretty clearly, but I'll just ask again. Can you just tell me how is the decision to evacuate made?
So we'll coordinate very closely with the incident command team who's actually running the fire. And if it's one of these ones where we have some time, they'll keep us informed. They'll make sure that we know what are the structures most likely to be threatened and what are the timelines, what are those trigger points. If the fire gets here, we need to get people starting to move. And we'll do it in conjunction with the fire services, and ultimately if it's in the county, then it'll come from us. We'll get all of the advice from them, and then we'll say, okay, it's time to go.
Thank you. Okay, we have our first question.
One of the best ways for our community to be prepared in case and when the next wildland fire happens is for us to purchase the abandoned Carmel Valley Airfield out near the village. That property has been used numerous times. In 2016, there were 12 to 13 helicopters stationed there for 2 weeks, 19 at one time. In 2008, during the Basin Complex fire, there were 1,500 CAL FIRE firefighters stationed there with tents and so forth to help combat that fire. Back in the 1970s, it was also used. It's countless times it's been used to help combat fires. Just recently, when there was a fire out in Kashawa, they needed to refuel one of their helicopters. They used the airfield. To make us better prepared for the next wildland fire, we need to ensure that that property remains open space and remains in the community. You'll see a number of volunteers around here wearing a green t-shirt. We have a booth set up in the table in the back corner. Please come back and sign up that you're interested in helping us try to preserve this important piece of property to safeguard us in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Mike Kaplan. I live in the Colorado area. I'm on the board of the Fire Safe Council for Monterey County. I'm not speaking for them today, but I do want to make a pitch myself for the Fire Safe Council. We act as a way, as a nonprofit fiscal sponsor to help people receive grants to do wildfire fuel reduction work, to prepare for wildfires. Say your neighborhood wants to do work to help protect you in a fire. There is money available, especially now. There's a lot more money coming down from the state, and we can help you receive those grant funds and administer them for you, so you can hire contractors to prepare your area for wildfires. The website is firesafemonterey.org, and there's information there on how you can contact us. Now I'd like to make my own comment and ask my own question. About 2 months ago, I saw an article in the Ventura County Star newspaper about the county of Ventura preparing to charge a $100,000 mitigation fee to allow people to create defensible space beyond the 100 feet required by law in unincorporated areas in Ventura County in the Malibu area. And that's because they're in the coastal zone and there are protected plant communities there. And the argument is they have to be able to, if you're going to do additional fire clearance around your home, preparing for a fire, they want to be able to buy an equivalent area of land, which costs as much as $100,000 in the same amount of acreage. And so they're preparing to charge that. There are numerous rules and regulations on the books. I've been participating. You can talk to Sarah Hardgrave in your office, and she will tell you that I was at Land Use Advisory Committee meetings starting in 2004, trying to get our coastal plan in Big Sur updated to allow people to prepare for wildfires. Unfortunately, there's language in there that could be interpreted to allow people to go out and reduce vegetation. It was intended to allow people to reduce vegetation to safe levels without the need for a permit. Monterey County planning staff interpreted that language to be meaningless in 2009 because it conflicted with environmentally sensitive habitat language. I've been working just recently, I mean, for years, but just in the last week or two, we had another meeting with planning staff, with the land use advisory committees, and they're now looking at requiring a forest management plan and permits for that same list of things that was supposed to encourage people, to allow people to go out without regulatory hindrance and do the work. So is there any hope that Monterey County, right now, if somebody here in Carmel Valley wants to cut a tree, I think you're supposed to plant 3. I don't know for sure exactly where that applies, but I know it's on your books. Is there any hope to get relief from these absurd regulations in the context of the need to prepare for fires? Next week.
So this is, I don't know if anyone in this room is prepared to answer that, Dr. Baumann. Who seems to have left, but what I know we will do at this meeting, we'll take questions just exactly like this. Sarah's capturing things so that we can come back to you with the response to you, because you speak particularly personally. I know you lost your house in a fire.
Right, but that's separate and apart from what we're talking about now.
I hear what you're talking about,
And,
yeah.
when Jonathan Pengberg made the comment of getting alternative evacuation routes, work with your neighbors to do that, the people next to me laughed. And the reason they laughed is because they know that's not going to happen in Monterey County. All right?
Thank you
So
for that.
if you could change your rules, there's also state and federal laws that do the same thing, but all these layers upon layers of laws need to change, or none of what we're hoping to get done is going to actually get done. If you look at old photographs of Carmel Valley, it didn't look like this.
Thank you.
And it should be
Thank you.
restored to its more natural condition.
Thank you. I hate to put you on the spot, our county administrative officer.
I do appreciate that question, and of course, I'm not a planner, and I will go back and discuss this with our resource management agency director and our planning director. But this, I think, what we've seen from the Campfire it's a new world. And we have developed over many, many years our Monterey County General Plan. We've taken into account all the endangered species, the exceptional habitat that we have in this community. And I think it will be a big decision for our community to change that in light of what we're seeing with the change in global warming. We're no stranger to fire in Monterey County. We've seen 5 major fires. We had the most expensive fire in history. So this is a very timely issue that we go back and we ask ourselves those difficult questions between our beautiful environment and what it's going to take to protect our communities and our homes. So I think the supervisor will take this back, will consider it, and will bring this forward in our future dialogue.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Good evening. I had 2 questions. One was about a more general use of goats in the city of Monterey. I live near the Skyline Forest Quarry Park area, and I live in dread of the kids that I know are smoking and drinking down there about lighting up, something that's going to light us all up. So goats, something more to reduce the understory. And then a second question, because that area, when people are evacuating, the roads can be full, and it can back up there easily. So I've been trying to figure out what is a big enough bare space to be survivable. Not sheltering in place in the home so much, but going, the car is not going to do it. How big of an open space does one really need to get to? Would Colton School soccer field be good enough? What?
Thank you for that question. Who feels comfortable answering that?
I can talk about the first part. I didn't hear the entire second question. I got the goat, right? I got the goats. So goats are a very effective part of management of a forest, and we've certainly looked at that, and I know that they get used a lot in Pebble Beach, gets them every year, and I believe that the city of Carmel is actually looking to get some lined up for this next year. But it's just one tool we have. In the city of Monterey specifically, where the question was asked, we've managed that forest using more traditional methods of getting people in there to clear some of the brush and fire hazards in there. So and we will probably, at this point, there are no plans to get goats into Monterey, but if that ends up being a viable and reasonable alternative, we're certainly open to that.
Okay, thank you. And now the second part of the question. We'll see if we can get Campfire here.
All right, and just as a historical perspective, goats were used in the city of Monterey in Deer Forest, as well as another neighborhood association with some fuel reduction a few years ago that they did in conjunction with the Fire Safe Council for Monterey County. But getting directly to your question about the amount of space required, I hope I'm answering this question as you asked it, and if I'm going in the wrong direction, please just see me afterward and I will try to add some more clarity to you. Specifically, the question was, how much space do you need? And just the same way that with evacuations, there's no magic bullet, silver bullet, easy answer. There's not an easy answer in terms of how much space do you need to survive in, because it's dependent upon the circumstances that you have at the time. However, I will say that in the Skyline Forest area, if you have a large conflagration that even the Colton Middle School soccer field would only be survivable for so many individuals. It's not large enough for the entire neighborhood, and so I'm using some caution and trying not to tell everyone to go to that same spot because it would quickly overfill and no longer be safe for all of the individuals there. So I apologize for not having a quick and easy answer for you, but making sure you bring up a good point about evacuation routes and how crowded some of them may become. Want to make sure that that is one of the main reasons that we have a defensible space around our structure, because part of the reason you may be stuck there is the fact that the evacuation route takes so long to clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next question.
Hello, my name is Jeff Wood. I live in Carmel Valley, in the Mid-Valley area, and I also am on the board of the Carmel Valley Association. One of our initiatives in the association was to contact HOAs in the valley to find out the issues they were having. One issue we came across was here in the mouth of the valley, there were a number of associations that were having problems with PG&E. And what they were doing is they were cutting their lines, above ground lines, and they were leaving it or tossing it in canyons and ravines. So what they're doing is they're creating more fire fuel. And luckily these HOAs were able to get matching grants to mitigate some of that using public funds that is being caused by a private company. So my question is, what can we do about this situation? Does the county have enough muscle to force PG&E to not leave their cuttings where they are?
That's a pretty interesting question, particularly right now with PG&E having filed for bankruptcy. So thank you for that question. I don't have an answer for it, but it's another one of those things that I think we're going to have to take a clear look at. And I should think that it's probably part of the work that you do when you go around looking at the various areas. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Michael.
I think Jonathan knows the state law as far as, he could probably comment on the PG&E.
Sure, I can address that briefly. It is one of the components that we look at in terms of overall fire protection around communities, and we want to make sure that we are reducing fuel loads, not just around the structures, but around the infrastructure as well. Water sources, utility corridors, whether it's gas or electric, want to make sure that we're doing our part. And yes, PG&E does play a role in that. And if you are interested in the state laws related to the disposal of vegetative matter around utility lines, what I can recommend is that you contact your state representatives and have a discussion with them about the pertinent state laws, because that is where they are going to have some sort of regulatory management. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
One additional thing that the OES can do is we have a very good relationship with PG&E. They're one of our stakeholders. I have weekly contact with their liaison for emergencies. And so if you send our office an email asking a question, I can direct it specifically to their liaison representative and get an answer for you and give you the personal attention for your question. So, okay?
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Hi, my name is Roberta Troxel. I live in Carmel Valley Village, so I think I'd be directing this to Chief Eucrates. I was asking about a comprehensive defensible space inspection program, and you say you are inspecting on a 3-year cycle. When did that start? And if you are doing that, are you doing a re-inspection when people are out of compliance to make sure they're in compliance?
That's a great question, yes. And some of it's a windshield. We drive by. If it's in compliance, we will not do a knock and notice. But we have a geographical, and depending where you live in the village, we can also do special circumstances. If you weren't in our window and you're getting a cancellation notice, or your insurance company wants to have some validated inspection, we can do that for a case basis, and we'll come out and do it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tom Gaino. I live in Kashawa. In the last few years, my house has been saved 3 times by the dedicated fire service and prisoners from Soledad. The thing that the major resource that was used to put out those fires was Los Padres Dam. And I'd like to see if we can put a program in place to keep Los Padres Dam dredged, keep it from being taken down like San Clemente. So I'd like to know if there's a program that's going to keep us as our major water resource here, even for the village.
Perfect. We've got just the right man to answer that question. We have Chris Cook from Callahan.
So that's a great question about Los Padres Dam. It is used for fire protection, and we coordinate closely with the fire departments in terms of their use of it. It's a critical component along with tanks and the infrastructure associated with those. So San Clemente Dam was a dam that was a cement structure, and it was a clear benefit to the community in terms of taking that down to help the environment with the Carmel River and the steelhead trout. Las Padres Dam is slightly different. It's an earthen dam. It would be much more complicated in terms of the impacts for that. It helps with shoulder seasons for the river. There's actually valves below that we can turn on and run water during shoulder seasons that help with the habitat. So it is something that is being looked at in terms of long-term analysis of what to do. But in terms of anything immediate, it's not similar to San Clemente Dam in that sense. And I do agree it does have a fire benefit.
What about dredging? Because that's why San Clemente went away, because there was failure to dredge it.
Yeah, it's so San Clemente Dam was removed and there was a bypass put around with an adjacent ravine, and part of that was the trucking to be able to take out all of the debris within the bottom, and I believe that is part of the long-term study for Las Padres Dam, is looking for options similar to that in terms of what can be done to sustain it or other options. Yeah. So unfortunately, I don't have a clear answer. All I can say is it's more of a long-term view and not quite as clear of a decision as San Clemente.
Thank you, Chris. Good. Next question?
Hi, my name is Michelle Bavard, and I think this is for Chief Euclides. I live in the Village, and I have 2 students at Carmel Unified School District, and I wanted to know what you were doing with the school district and the kids for the Ready, Set, Go, because neither one of my children know anything about that except for what we've taught them.
You know, that's a great question, and it's probably something that we haven't incorporated into our public education program in the school. We have an aggressive program. We have a character program where we go out and firefighters are in costumes and we have themes, right? We kind of hit that 3rd to 5th grade level. Kind of after that, they want to sit in a fire truck, and we do some fire extinguisher prop training. But that's a great question, and I'll take that back to our Fire Prevention Bureau, and I don't think we've ever probably looked at that as far as kind of getting the Ready, Set, Go for the youth.
Okay, and also the evacuation for the kids, that would be nice to add to it too.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Great, thank you.
I think that was a very good suggestion, and I can tell you from the work that I've done previously when I was president of United Way, we frequently would send program information home in the backpacks of kids, and it really got home to mom and dad that way. So thanks.
I think I'm a teacher at 2 Larcitos for Carmel Unified. My name's Elizabeth Golden. I'm also a homeowner in Robles Del Rio, up by the Robles Del Rio Lodge, so I'm here for 2 friends. Michelle definitely addressed a concern I have after, reading about Paradise teachers grabbing kids and having phone numbers and contacting parents, letting them know that they have their children, which is terrifying to think of being in that situation. I really feel for them. So I'm asking, also like Michelle was, if there's a way, or if you're already working with Carmel Unified to help teachers know what to do in that situation. We, of course, want to protect our children. First priority. As a homeowner, I live in Robles Del Rio, and I understand that we're having another meeting about that, but Mary had encouraged me to ask my questions here. So I just have questions. I'm not going to wait for an answer, and you can answer them as you see appropriate. I just want to thank everyone in this room for coming, and also there's so many people of service. When the Sobranes fire happened, I felt well cared for and well informed, and I appreciate that. It came within 4 miles, under 5 miles of my home. And so sheltering in place is one of my questions. Are there advisors to help us with that? And I'm not saying I'm not going to go when I'm asked to go, but what I am saying is if we can't get out, how can we train ourselves and get our supplies ready so if we need to shelter in place in the meadow, for instance, we can do that and we can help our elderly and asthmatics, etc. Because I can buy a mask for myself and a water pack for myself. I have a volunteer firefighter background, but when my neighbor shows up who has emphysema, and she doesn't have a mask. So those are the kind of things that if we had advisors that we could help our neighborhoods to try to get ready. And again, not that we wouldn't leave when we were asked to leave. The other thing is the 100-foot clearance. I live in an oak forest, and I feel a guardianship to that. I love going home with the oak trees above my head, and I've been thinking and looking at that differently, thinking at some point we might need to mitigate that and open that. But I also understand that fires travel through roots and gopher holes, etc. So I'm wondering, are you advising me to take down the oak trees on my home because of my 100-foot clearance, because they're within 100 feet? I don't think you're saying that. The other thing is I have I inherited from the previous owner 3 eucalyptus trees, ornamental. Yeah.
The crowd goes wild.
I had cleared everything. I have not gotten a notice. I got it when I first moved in from you, probably, hey, you know, you got to do this, and I did. I knew I needed to do that, and I got all that work done. All of that work done, but I did inherit those 3 trees, and I have trimmed them up. But I know I'm not the only one. And the fire mitigation, there's the chipping grants. Are there grants also to help people remove such items, trees that will explode in a fire? That's one of my questions too. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Does anyone want to tackle any of the questions that she asked just now?
I think we both can.
Yeah.
Yep.
Again, I like the educational component. It's something that we have to address. The one question, again, and I've heard this a number of times about elderly neighbors, they're on oxygen, they have no close family. It's really one of those as a community to kind of help one another. It's a span of control issue because we hear that a lot. At your village fire station, what we were just talking about, we have 2 to 3 people on duty there, and that's a kind of busy station. That station also cross-staffs an ambulance when we get busy. They go out and help Kashawa. For those folks, their time of need. So again, it's one of those we continue to tell people those communities kind of have to come together and help one another. Escaline's one way in, one way out. That's not going to go away. We do have some resources now. We have a great Explorer program. It's something for years that we're trying to be able to get Explorers started, a youth program from 14 to 18 years of age. That's something now that I'm thinking that these are young men and women looking at careers in the fire service. We have the appropriate, saws. I mean, we might be able to go and do some of these tree trimming functions for these elderly folks that don't have the resources to do that. They can get community service hours for high school. So, if people come, Stacy was a prime example. I mean, she took the lead, and trust me, we were corresponding late at night via email, and it takes someone to persistent to look out for that community, and we do have the resources. It's just a matter of coordination, but it's a span of control issue. But great questions, but it starts with you got to let us know, and we'll try to help. Oh, Jonathan.
Okay. And I'll just tack on to a couple of the other parts of your questions that I can remember was the oak trees. No, we are not advocating that you cutting down your oak trees. If you have dead branches or fuel buildup in certain areas, absolutely. You can ask not only Monterey Regional Fire District, you can ask CAL FIRE. We can come out and assist you, either one of our entities, or if you don't live in that particular area, ask your local fire district. It doesn't matter where you live. Ask your local firefighters, and whether that's CAL FIRE or your local government entity, we're here to help you with that preparedness aspect, including, for example, potentially removing eucalyptus trees. Generally speaking, yes, there are programs to help with removal of flammable vegetation. However, it still has to comply with all of the myriad regulations and policies that are in place, such as tree ordinances that are both related at the state level as well as the county level. You heard Mike Kaplan discussing some of our regulatory issues that we have and some of the hurdles. But nonetheless, you can certainly come to us. The Resource Conservation District of Monterey County has a fire mitigation coordination position. The Fire Safe Council for Monterey County is a nonprofit group of volunteers whose only existence is to help get funds to communities to do fuel reduction activities. So there are resources out there in addition to the governmental resources that you see in your neighborhood fire department. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Next question.
My name's Larry Daniels. I live in Corral de Tierra. And as I've been sitting here this evening, the vision from the TV screens of people escaping paradise and having to drive through hell because there was no or very little fuel mitigation along the side of the roads. There was fuel right up to the pavement. That's common here in Monterey County, especially where I live. I'm sure it's same in Cashawa, all of Colorado, down the coast. We should be, right now, we should be out there clearing, making these roads into something that will serve when the fire comes. And in the process, if we do that clearing, we may improve our chances of avoiding that fire, because roads are frequently the source of the fire. Chain dragging on Highway 68 caused a fire in our neighborhood a couple of years ago. One of the Reading fires was a flat tire on a rim throwing sparks. And of course, the cigarette butts, if you walk along the edge of I walked Robley Road the other day and found cigarette butts one after another. So what is the county prepared to do, or Caltrans or Campfire? What are you prepared to do to mitigate this fuel so that our escape routes are functional and not blazing infernos?
Thank you for the question.
Once again, an excellent question. Thank you for that. The county has, just in the unincorporated area alone, we have 1,200 miles of unincorporated county road. And our Public Works Department routinely goes and mows along the roads. It's one of our routine maintenance functions. We've been resource constrained in prior years. However, if you recall, we did not overturn as an electorate in the state of California what was called SB1, which will bring significant tax gas revenues to the county and local jurisdictions. And we also passed as a county Measure X, CAMC's Measure X. So those will bring additional funds into our road department, not only to maintain and repave the roads, but also to increase our routine maintenance. So this is an ongoing issue. We will be ramping up, and like the gentleman indicated, it is an important fire safety issue.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Quick message for everyone. Should you choose to leave now, that's fine. I've got bad news though. It appears there's a short in the electrical system, so there are no lights in the parking lot. So please be careful when you choose to leave, and maybe use the flashlight on your cell phone to light your way.
Did you want to talk about the Campfire grants?
Yeah. Yes, next question.
Mary.
Hello, my name is Dale McCauley.
Jonathan has some more to add.
We have in this community a lot of residents, but we also have a population of visitors. This overlap of our high fire season and summer activities, events, which bring in 50 or 100,000 people who have no experience in our area with our roads or with our vegetation. What is the county's plan to handle all these uninformed tourists that are in our area at the height of our most dangerous time?
Okay, we've got an answer over here. Thank you.
I think the one thing I know when Supervisor Adams was first elected, for example, was roadside signage, our smoky signs. I know Supervisor Adams reached out to me and said that was a complaint that, it's a standard, good old day, high severity, and just to educate tourists and everybody alike. So we did put one up. I know Cal Fire has them in the Cashawa area. We put one on the Highway 68. And there's probably some grant funding to probably do some additional signage of that, at least when people drive by, to see that they understand that it's extreme fire danger or moderate, or however we educate it. So that's probably the cheapest and quickest to be able to help educate tourists that come from the area. They're not experienced with the severity of our fuel conditions.
Follow up. It seems like the Sobrani's fire landed right on one of our biggest events this past couple years ago. How was the decision made to allow the car events to go on when that fire was raging on our hills?
Thank you for your question. So I don't know if anyone up here would like to give it a shot, but I'll go to my go-to person.
It's above my pay grade. Exactly, that's what I was trying to talk about during the county, yeah.
Once again, a very good question. During a major event, the Office of Emergency Services provides coordination support to the incident commanders. And in California, if you can imagine, you have FEMA, and then you have the State Office of Emergency Services, and then in each of our counties, referred to as operational areas, you have offices of emergency services, which are generally in the counties. What the county does is it provides support to the incident commanders, and in a fire, it is generally the fire agencies. And when you have multiple agencies, such as the fires that we had in Big Sur, you may have the Federal Fire Service, you may have state, and then our local districts involved as well. And they call that a unified command. And in that unified command, they would provide advice to the county and Caltrans and the jurisdictions of what they believe is safe and not safe, and then we would act accordingly. Now, remember that there's private entities that do activities, but we would advise on behalf of the incident commander. So my recollection at the time was they made a determination that it was safe to conduct those public activities.
Thank you. Thank you, and I can tell you that in other circumstances, the Salinas Valley Half Marathon and also the Big Sur Half Marathon were canceled in 2 subsequent years because of air quality. They were too fearful of having the runners and the walkers out when the air was so bad. So that was an example of, again, this time it was the nonprofit organization who made that decision.
Hi, my name is Matt Hanner. I live in Robles del Rio. I also work for a general contractor where I handle a lot of the permitting. So one of the things I run up into all the time is for new construction or a remodel of a certain size, we're required to do fire sprinklers, which help save lives. They can be costly and they're difficult to do retrofits with. I also deal with WUI requirements, which is the Wildland Urban Interface, where we're doing fire-resistant materials, not fire-proof materials. My question is, why is there no push towards external fire sprinklers and a way to coat a house with a mist? It seems to me that that's being done in Australia and in other places, and the big concern isn't the roaring flames hitting the house, it's the embers that land on it, and when your resources are strapped because you've got 1,000 houses you're trying to protect, you can't get to all of them. And it just seems a way that you could extend your resources if that was a requirement, and it's a much easier retrofit as well.
Any comments? Anybody?
I think it's a great question, and I think it starts at the legislature level. We just now passed a bill that all new construction, will have solar in single-family residential dwellings, and I think this is something that probably the insurance industry will probably lobby for, to start looking at some of these high-severity areas of external sprinkler systems. The history of internal sprinkler systems was life safety. It wasn't to put the fire out, it was just to give you enough time to get out of the house. But we've seen them, we've had an ordinance here in our district since 1988, and we've seen a tremendous reduction of single-family dwelling fires due to residential sprinklers. So I think it's great, and I wouldn't doubt with the losses that the insurance industry has seen over the years that they'll start probably looking at that technology.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. That was a great question, a super idea.
Hi, my name is Sam Ballesteri. I've worked in public safety in Monterey County about 40 years. I've just got a comment for people on evacuations. Go to the internet, download a 1 square mile area map or bird's eye view map of your neighborhood. It'll show you all roads, trails, maybe a way through your neighbor's backyard to get to the next street. But that's something you can update all the time and have it by your phone book, so if you have to go, you know which direction the fire is coming from and go the opposite.
Thanks, that's a great idea. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Colleen Marquez, and I'm a 4th generation Carmel Valley girl, and grew up here in the valley, and and have just recently moved back to the area from the Bay Area over the summer. And I have some personal experience with some of the agencies, the Resource Conservation Agency. 2 years ago, on the day that the Soberanes fire started, I signed a grant that I was able to get to clear 20 acres of our 50-acre parcel, help mitigate some of the fuel, and hired contractors to help get rid of this fuel, and also get rid of some of the weeds, the French broom or Scotch broom. So that was really a wonderful blessing to have that available. So it also trained my eye to see what, that beautiful tree that had just fallen and was really lovely as it leaned there, or now I could see it as really fuel. And so it really changed the way that I look at the forest. And I was recently walking in Garland, which is part of what our family gave to the park over the period of years. There's like 700 acres, now part of the Garland's 4,200 acres. So as I was walking back there with my son over New Year's, I was looking at all this beautiful fuel and thinking, I know that I'm doing my very best as a steward of the land to clear and make our property as fire safe for that Garzas and Baranda community, because I feel like we're the gatekeeper to the canyon, Garzas Canyon. But who's doing the work behind our property that used to be ours, but now it's the park's? Is there somebody in the park district that's writing or is getting ready to write the grants to the Resource Conservation Agency? Is there money available for that? That was my first question. And the second one is, as I lie awake at night in that little cabin that my great-grandparents built that's in Garzas Canyon, I think to myself, I'm looking at, are those blankets that you can get for we already know that our structure is indefensible. Even though I've done everything that I can, the fire department told me at the Soberanes fire, no matter what you do, just do your best, but basically if the fire's coming down the canyon, we're not going to be sending our men here. It's a fire trap. So I'm thinking, okay, our special structure, do those fire blankets work? How do I get real information other than just, like a commercial, and how do I really measure that? So thank you.
Anyone have an answer for that, Gary?
Talk to the fire monks.
Pardon me?
Sahara. They have experience with that, and they will tell you where it worked and where it didn't.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, how about Gary?
Man, there's a lot of products available. The one that I've had the most success with is a gel product that you can actually mix with water and spray in your home. It's kind of messy when you try to clean it up, but it's extremely effective in blocking the heat directly on your structure. There's a couple of commercial names. Barricade is one, but you can just Google fireproof gel, and I'm sure that Chief Rikides and Chief Van Bern can give you their experiences, but I found those to be extremely effective.
Thank you. Jonathan?
And just to address the other question about whether or not the regional parks is looking into fuel reduction activities, and I can just tell you, yes, we have spoken with Rafael Payan as well as some of his staff, like King Camarillo, to start to address some of the fire safety concerns in multiple parks that they manage in conjunction with some of their larger neighbors and landowners, such as the Santa Lucia Conservancy for the preserve. We're working with a lot of entities to try to make sure that we can present a plan that both protects natural resources as well as creates a fire defense network in our area to do our best to prepare, because we do know that the next fire is coming.
Thank you. Thanks. Next question.
Hi, my name is Damon Wood. I'm Carmel Valley up in the Robles del Rio neighborhood. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you everyone for coming. It's really encouraging to see a concerned and engaged citizenry, along with our representative government and response from these agencies. And so for me, it kind of rekindles my faith in democracy. So thank you, everyone. So I have two questions. First, I'm curious to know, what did we learn from the campfire?
Who wants to tackle that one?
Well, I can start.
Okay, thanks, Gary.
Well, I can tell you that every responder in the room has analyzed what happened up there to the best of their ability. They've read the after-action reports, and then they've looked at their own operation and tried to determine how they can improve how we do things here.
Stand up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do I look better standing up than sitting down? Then I'm standing up for the rest of them.
Whether you're talking or not.
Okay, so for the Office of Emergency Services, the key mistakes that were made up there, or the flaws, I won't call them mistakes, is the alert and warning that did or didn't happen in a rapid fashion. Okay, so what we've learned is that what we call pulling the trigger. You got to get that warning and alert out right away. Okay, gaining the situational awareness of what's happening in the emergency is a key thing. If you don't have that and you can't get it, you don't have the intelligence to pass on to the people. So what we're doing is we're improving our stakeholder relationships so that we can gain rapid intelligence from our responders, from the communities that exist. We have people within not only Big Sur but Carmel Valley that we're connected to through our websites, Nixle, all the different social media accounts. And what we're doing right here tonight, pumping everybody to try to sign up voluntarily so we can get the message out to them, telling them the things that they need to do as far as watching the news media, staying informed, so that the message that you are in danger can get to you in a timely manner. Does that help answer your question? Yeah, so that's what we're doing in the county. Chiefs, do you want to talk about the fire service?
Everything we talked tonight about.
Yeah.
Really?
No,
Okay.
that's the wrong question.
I'm sorry?
Everything that was mentioned tonight about preparing, everything, that's all the key points I think that we're.
That's Chief Getz talking. If you can't hear her, she's basically reiterating that we're really pushing the preparedness message. And this isn't the first time we're talking about it just tonight. We've had these meetings, and individually they talk with their constituents. And we're trying to drive home the message that you can do a lot to help yourself before the fire happens. And then we can do a lot when the fire's there, but it really is a partnership between the responders and yourselves, the community.
Thank you. I think that's very important, that we own this, and it is our responsibility.
Second question, so we found, I believe it was an archived Pinecone article that was describing the fire at the lodge in the Robles del Rio neighborhood. And one of the challenges that was described there was that there was a lack of water pressure with the fire hydrants. And because it's sort of an older neighborhood, that the infrastructure isn't in place to be able to have multiple fire hydrants active simultaneously. And so, given that the Soberanis fire came within a few miles of our neighborhood and there's a fire hydrant close to our house, it certainly raises our concerns about vulnerabilities of the neighborhood given the lack of water pressure. And so, has anything been done since then, or is there anything in the works to fix that problem? Is that problem just unique to Robles del Rio, or is that community-wide throughout the valley? I'm just wondering what kind of vulnerability do we have because the infrastructure isn't in place?
Again, we have Chris Cook from Cal-Am who can respond to that question.
That's a great question. I actually brought some plans tonight that will be back at the back table if you'd like to look at them, but there's a fire flow task force that's made up of the fire chiefs, and they look at different projects that they'd like to do in the area, and they actually all came together and decided to pool their money together for the Robles del Rio area to improve the main infrastructure. So basically there's 2-inch galvanized pipe and galvanized pipe roads So there's not much flow, not much pressure. And this year, we're gonna be upsizing that to 8-inch pipe and putting hydrants in along the way based on the fire chief's input. So it's gonna be a really good project, and Supervisor Adams has said she'll do her part to expedite the process to get us working as soon as possible.
Do you have a time frame on that?
We're looking at having it probably out to bids coming back in April, so we'd have the construction done by the end of this year, but as anybody knows in construction, you don't want to give a hard date, but this year we would have it done, so.
Good. Thanks very much. Thank you. And then we have, how many more people with questions? 1, 2, 3. Okay, great. So come on, why don't you all come up? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Joe Longo. I'm a 20-year resident of Carmel Views. One of the speakers tonight said that it only takes one home to set off a home-to-home advance through a community. Now, for some homeowners, for a variety of reasons, they will not maintain a defensible space around their homes and are in violation of state law. Can you help them see the need to reduce the fire load around their homes by enforcing the law?
Thank you.
Thank you, and it is a fair point, thank you. Public Resources Code 4291 addresses the minimum defensible space requirements around structures in around the wildlands, what's called the state responsibility area. That is state law, and we do our part to inspect along with our local government cooperators. All of the agencies are working together because it's in everyone's interest to make sure that people are doing their part. We would much rather have compliance than fines for non-compliance, because the fine for non-compliance doesn't solve the non-compliance. If someone is willing to pay a fine and suffer the consequences of that, it doesn't change the fuel loading situation around a structure and in someone's community. So we are certainly doing our part to encourage participation. I know that other entities, other counties throughout the state have devised other situations or methods of dealing with this similar situation, such as doing the work themselves and finding the property or assessing a levy. There are other ways of going about it. However, that is outside of the state jurisdiction. All we can do is work with the property owner and try to receive compliance. And if it comes to a citation, that still does not solve the problem. And I can empathize with you, and we're doing the best we can to continue to educate the public.
Thank you. So I'm going to just take the 3 next questions, and then we want to have time for interaction, and I've already extended this part. So why don't you come on up and ask your question?
Sure. Thank you. My name is Sally Rideout. I'm a resident of Robles Del Rio, and I watched the lodge burn down. I also, just a couple years ago, woke up in the middle of the night as water was draining out of my house when my friend's house on Lower Circle burned down. So I think it's really great that Cal-Am is looking at our neighborhood and trying to address this fire flow issue that we have. Although I am a little concerned that just increasing the diameter size of the pipe that's going to be run from the one storage tank that we have up there will not be adequate. So I'm hoping that when this project comes online, there is some consideration for another storage tank. I know that there are probably property issues with that, but I really do sincerely hope that Cal-Am will take that into consideration, because I don't care how big your pipes are, if you don't have the storage, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much.
I just have a quick question. You had mentioned about the chipping program. In the past, I thought that they did not do the haul-away. And now they are doing the haul-away once they chip. Is that
Yes.
what you said?
I'll take the chip.
Awesome. Okay.
That's a great question. Yeah, so we'll do 2 things. One, we can rebroadcast it so we can put the chips on people's personal property, or we have an area where we can relocate the chips to. So.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Hi, I'm Grindy Beach. I manage Tehama, but I also live on Jack's Peak. I'm probably one of the younger people who lives
on Jacks Peak. It's a very elderly community, and I'm sure most of you as responders are aware that that's a very critical area in terms of fire danger. I've worked a lot with Kim Bernheisel with Campfire in terms of fuel load. We really appreciate the chipper program. I think a concern for many residents in that area is that Aguajita Road is a cut through and a way to get out when other roads are impacted. That infrastructure is failing. The road is narrowing. There's areas of subsidence. There are areas on Viejo where there's half a road because of subsidence that happened 3 years ago. There are many roads on Jacks Peak that are cul-de-sacs, so it's one way. And when somebody's in their 80s or 90s, it's not obvious what they're going to do. So if resources could be directed toward that area, that would be incredibly helpful in terms of connectivity from other areas that need to evacuate. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mike, I thank you for being here, but I'm going to close the questions off now. So, okay, one last one. I know him so well.
So first off, want to hear it. First off, clearly this is not within your power, but it's a question I have to ask. As you perhaps can hear, I'm from London. We don't have a lot of fire problems there because it rains nearly every day. But I've lived in Big Sur and on the coast. Oh, you can't hear me? Sorry. Can you hear me now? Yes. There we go. So the jokes aside, I live on Country Club now for many years. And I'm wondering if we're ever going to begin to put power lines underground like we do in Europe. Well, why would you put a wooden pole up so it can burn down again or a tree can fall on? I know it's not up to you guys, but is there any chance that could begin to happen?
It's all about cost.
Well, thank you for that comment. I think it's something all of us would like to see happen. So thank you.
In other words, no answer.
In other words, no answer. Thank you. I don't want you to leave without feeling like your comments and questions have been addressed. So we do have about 20 more minutes where you'll have the opportunity just to come forward or come up and talk to the other folks, or maybe everybody will just kind of go to the back and enjoy your time. I thank you so much for paying attention to this really critical time here.